Out of all the biggest Jew haters on the internet right now, at least at a mainstream level, Nick Fuentes is the only one I can genuinely say that I have some sort of, I can't call it respect. That's not the word, but you'll get what I mean when I explain it. Nick Fuentes is the only guy who will just say, hey, it's the Jews, right? He's the only one. Candace Owens hides behind terms like Zionists, Frankists, the IDF, Israel. She pretends that she's talking about the government that is in need of criticism, the president, Bibi Netanyahu, when in reality, she's talking about the Jews. Tucker Carlson will use terms such as the state of Israel, the Israeli government, the IDF, when really he means the Jews. Nick Fuentes is the only one who will come out there and say, hey, you know what? Those Jews. How about them Jews? It's the Jews. He's the only one. And so that's the only thing that is quote unquote redeeming about him. Now, there is something I've oftentimes asked myself about this guy until yesterday when I came across this clip and a preceding X post. Is this guy genuine in his hatred for the Jewish population, for blacks, for what other groups does he point at? I guess sometimes Hispanics, Mexicans, or, other immigrants. Like, does he actually hold that disdain? Or is all of this just attention capture? Is he the greatest rage baiter in internet history? Is that what's taking place right now? Now, again, before I saw what I saw, I thought to myself, now I think this dude just genuinely has this hatred in his heart. Then I came across this. Not that, but this.
My dad's been watching Benny Johnson. I tried talking to him about the conflict with Israel and he said the US attack was necessary because they chant death to America. I sent him your clips and Timothy Gordon clips on Zionism. What should I do? Have my dad. Benny Johnson is Enjoy your 4th of July.
Why are we here? Is it just to suffer? Is it just so that we can be tortured to death by idiots? So we could just be tortured to death by the Goyim? Why? Okay. I'm like 2 seconds out from just joining the Jews at this point. Like, I want to oppress you with them at this point. It's like I started out like the Jews are oppressing us. Then it's like, no, the Jews are oppressing all of you. Maybe I need to help them. Maybe I need to enhance that. Maybe just how like the kings of Europe used to hire the Jews to torture their own people. Maybe the Jews will hire me to torture all of you. Wouldn't that be something? It's still an option. It's always an option. Let's just say, let's put that on the back burner. Let's just say that's plan B.
All right. So that's what I came across, and it gave me everything I needed to know. And then I came across this. Mind you, this is within maybe an hour, 2 hour span. I find it incredibly suspicious that Tucker quit Fox News to spend a year doing diplomacy with Milei, who is the president of Argentina, Vox, not sure who that is, Orban, I believe that is Hungary, Bukele, I believe that is El Salvador. Then traveled the Gulf doing diplomacy with the leaders of Saudi, Qatar, and UAE. This is the newest tour, the newest Tucker tour within the last year or so. Then interviews U.S. adversaries like Putin and now the Iranian president. For those of y'all who don't know and didn't see my last video specifically on Tucker and this Iranian president interview, I broke this down. And, I'm a 1A guy, First Amendment through and through. Interview who the hell you want to interview. Sit down with who you want to sit down with. Say what you want to say. Just know that it's going to come with its consequences. But it's been real interesting how Tucker has had so much smoke for Americans, more specifically the leader of America, while he has these sort of softball interview style back and forth with these dictators, those who cry out death to America. He has far less animosity for than he does, let's say, a Ted Cruz, right? So anyway, that was the first part of Nick's little post. And then it continues. This is a talk show host. seems more like an operative of domestic/foreign intelligence, or maybe he is simply casual dude who wears flip-flops, doesn't own a TV, and loves nicotine, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? Because I finally realized that Nick Fuentes is indeed a vapor in the wind. He's actually not the most dangerous. He is a genuine flippity flopper. Now, the way in which he is dangerous, he's not the most dangerous, but he is still partially dangerous, is because of the hatred that he continues to push. And he does that for the sake of the audience. However, what Nick does is he taps into an audience that already exists, right? So you have an audience that has already been formed of these kids who are coming from Reddit, you know, the old school 4chan guys, like the guys who would be completely engrossed in the conspiracy. I happen to be one of those when I was younger. That's why this kind of hits home for me. When I was like 15 years old, watched, I think it was called The Zeitgeist for the first time, and I went all the way down that rabbit hole, right? The 10 families that own the world, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. That was the world in which I completely absorbed myself into, and essentially I lived in this victim mentality that kept me stuck for about a decade of my life. Nick Fuentes is simply tapping into an audience that exists. Candace Katari Owens and Tucker Carlson are creating an audience, right? It's one thing for the little mustache man to go into these little secret cubbies where people already have this deep hatred, disdain, and animosity towards the Jewish people. That's one thing, right? These people already held these beliefs, you know, because of their own upbringing, etc. It's another thing entirely when you are now going outside and preaching that message to people who have, let's say, never heard of these things or have an inkling, but they still have a sense of humanity. And you continue to perpetuate these messages. That's what Candace, that's what Tucker truly are. They're the ones who played the middle for long enough to where you don't believe that surely they could actually be lying to you. God forbid they may actually be playing a dangerous game. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I believe with Candace, there is a genuine hatred that she holds for these people. Much of it is likely inflamed due to her 30-day fiance, who is now her husband. If you know the story, you know. But, you know, this is a man who his specific sect of Catholicism holds those very same sort of beliefs, which ironically are Marxist beliefs, right? Marx wrote a book, What Shall We Do, like about the Jew in essence, like how do we deal with the Jewish problem? Marx himself also having Jewish lineage, but that's a story for another time. The very same beliefs of these people are the number one cause of evil in the world, and we must eradicate them completely. Something that was experienced by the Armenians in Turkey, something that was experienced by the Igbos in Nigeria, right? Something that was experienced by the Chinese in Southeast Asia, but at a massive scale with the Jewish population. Candace Owens, she pushes a narrative of I'm just asking questions. And Nick has probably done the same thing. But we know what we're dealing with there. We still call it out, as I'm going to continue to do in this video and really break this down at a molecular level. But we also have to realize that the ones who are the most sadistic and dangerous are the ones who are pushing the very same dangerous lies, but are doing it under the guise of I'm just asking questions. And this is a criticism that I've gotten before to say, well, you talk about black culture, you're pushing more hatred towards black people. And I say, what I believe I'm actually doing is calling out a culture that has been taken and internalized by black folk, because it didn't start with black people in America. Surprise, surprise. It started as the redneck culture in the South of America, not South America, but in the South within the United States of America, which came from the Ulsters in England, right? The back alleyways, the highways and byways in England. Those people who were violent, promiscuous, lazy, didn't want no job, were leeching off the government, unproductive, all those, and low value for life. The very same characteristics were then taken by these Southern black folks and then moved north. And then it became not just a subculture, but a mainstream culture pushed through the music, pushed through the media, etc. I'm looking to combat that because that is the most dangerous and destructive thing that black people have ever faced in America. Period. That's the actual problem. It's a cultural problem. The fatherless households, that's the problem. So I won't sit here and be, oh, you ain't got no daddy. No. This is an issue. This needs to be fixed. But when you have the likes of, again, the Tuckers of the world, etc., they're pushing their poison sadistically, cunningly, by covering it up with, well, I'm just trying to inform myself. And that's how much of this happens. If you think the little mustache man went out into these new audiences and, was full, ammo with them, no, he was convincing them, soothsaying them. Now he's probably still yelling, right? But, we need to stand up for ourselves. And these people do not have our best interest. And that's the sort of, maybe they're the ones who are actually controlling these systems. Just think about it. Look at the percentage of them that are in government. Look at how many of them are bankers. Look how many of them, without any sort of other context. You're not going to tell them that the reason why these people are bankers is because when they came to this country with nothing, they were looking for industries. And so they said, well, what can we do? We have nothing to our names. Maybe we can sell some clothes. And so they sold clothes, peddling clothes throughout 1800s, 1900s New York, and then saved up enough money over the next 3 to 6 years to finally start up a shop. And then the shop becomes 2 and then 4 and then 6 and then 8. Oh, where do we store our money? Well, we got to create our own institutions, creates a bank. We got to create it with in-house because when we deal with people outside, there's still a stain upon us. They see us as outsiders. And then all of a sudden that becomes a part of your culture. Education, pushing the kids to go into school, even if the people around you don't have those very same mentalities and those very same value systems. Now, when you start to be successful, you're seen as evil. You control everything. My father, as a Zimbabwean in Zimbabwe, had some of the very same accusations because he climbed his way from the very same place into success. But guess what? He worked night and day to make that happen. And that's the very same work ethic that now I've adopted and hopefully continues to serve me and my children and their children's children, etc. To say you can come from nothing. You can come from scratch. And I'm not talking about poverty and abject starvation, etc. But even just, you start from scratch when you create your thing. Or if you take a business and you elevate it to the next and next level, that takes a certain level of competence. But we can't have that conversation. That's too nuanced. That takes away from what we're actually trying to push here, which is an agenda. It's propaganda in the truest sense. And what is the purpose of it? Unfortunately and heartbreakingly enough, it is because when you hold a certain level of disdain, hatred, and oftentimes that comes from a fear. Most people who believe that somebody else is controlling their life, whoever it may be, it's rooted in fear. And the fear is, I believe that I don't have autonomy. I don't have agency in my life. I can't do anything. So you look at your bank account, you see overdraft. You look in your bank account, you see nothing. You look in bank account, you see a little bit. And the first thing that comes to mind is, well, surely it must be them. And then now you have voices that echo that very same sentiment and are soothsaying. Now, again, when you have the overt, it's like the overt and the covert narcissist, the overt, which is the Nick Fuenteses of the world, it is the Jew. The Jew is after you, right? But when you have a Candace, it's like, well, isn't that a good question to ask? I mean, we're just asking questions. Isn't it curious how, the more Jews there are in the banking system, the less money you have? Doesn't even make any sense. Isn't it curious that your wife left you and Jews exist? Isn't it curious how you're obese and Jews own food? Just think, isn't it curious how you're starving, but there are Jews who are eating? I know I'm being facetious in this, but just think about the level of non-intellect it takes to get to this place. It is dangerous. And, much of this is being inspired in me from what I am seeing as far as The level of, and it's easy to just write it off as stupidity, but it's deeper than stupidity. But there was a recent video with Charlie Kirk, and a mother calls in and she's like, I'm so thankful my son woke up from all the stuff that was going on in 2020, etc. But he's gone so far. Now he's fallen into, the groyper of things, which is like Nick Fuentes and his, I guess, collective or, band of goons or whatever it is. But like now she finds her son in that place. And I'm like, dude, this is happening to millions upon millions of young men mostly. And the young women are falling into the far leftism, which is, again, its own version of hatred based in this, quasi empathy and compassion for the people who are actually the violators, and a full discrediting of those who are actually being persecuted because, well, whiteness, white supremacy, and blackness. Nick Fuentes is somebody who, again, I feel is just going to unravel because now it's unpopular to actually side with Israel as an American, let alone, I can only imagine as a European or whatever else it is, right? It is... It's the equivalent of being in England before, things really popped off. And Churchill's over there is like a lone voice in the woods saying, hey, there's a problem over here. The Austrian, this guy's bugging out. He's a real issue for all of us. Everybody else is like, oh, nonsense. You're a warmonger and things of that nature. And then all of a sudden, Churchill is a genius. And of course, now there's revisionist history as far as who Churchill is. So, again, Nick Fuentes is of the world. We continue to call them out, but we know what they are. He's going to go with the tide. He might switch up to, maybe we should reconsider tomorrow because now he realizes that's, kind of the counterculture because he needs that in order to be controversial, to continue to feed a controversial crowd. When it comes to the likes of a Candace Owens, when it comes to the likes of, Tucker Carlson, I believe it is their own internalized hatred of a people, an internalized, maybe even victimhood, dare I say, that they're now externalizing. These are the conversations they're having behind closed doors, and they can't help but express those. This explains why Candace Owens would, defend a person like an Andrew Tate. Does that make sense for a woman who claims to be this Christian to be friends with a PIMP? Self-appointed, who literally sold women on the internet, in essence, in order to make his first profits. A man who is now converted to Islam, the very same ideology that looks to destroy what she is. And she's silent about it. That this man who is best friends with her husband, silent about that. Silent about it. But as soon as there's a peep from over here, all eyes over there. So yeah, this is just food for thought, but these are conversations that are continuous, and I'll keep my eye on them because it's interesting for me. And look at this picture. Like, this tells me everything I need to see. This right here. There's always a little smirk on his face. Like, yeah, for him, it's a game, but for some, it's not. And those ones we have to be extremely cautious of and, continue to call them out for what they are. And I'm so thankful to see multitudes of people waking up. I've never had the intention of like being anti this person or anti that person. I haven't. But these are the biggest voices. And it's so curious to me how, after Candace was being called out for being paid, then she creates this expose about, well, I know there's people paying $1,000 each. And literally everybody's come out like, well, where's our $1,000 at? Is that not projection maybe? I recently saw something that said Tucker Carlson, like somebody's best friend was working for Carlson and left after, I guess, a year or whatever it was because he started taking money from the Middle East. And then, all of a sudden, the last 6 months, he's been a sympathizer of the Islamic regime. It's real curious stuff here. But again, we have to continue to think for and discern for ourselves. Don't even believe me. Don't even believe me. Look into it for yourself and see how it goes. Simple as that. Trust your own instinctive, intuitive knowing. And then the facts will show themselves and essentially they'll be clear as day. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there. Or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising.